Well, hello everyone. It's great to see you all here. It's great to see some of the members of the CHARM team. CHARM is the Center for HIV and Research in Mental Health, and we're here to talk to you about an exciting new opportunity that we're starting for the first time this year, which is the CHARM Scholar Award. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started on talking with you about the award. This is being recorded so that you can refer back to it later, or that you can let others know. Some of you on the call are mentors yourselves and can share it with other people. All right. So without further ado, let's get started. This is the Scholar Award, and the purpose of the CHARM Scholar Award is to increase opportunities for research advancement of early stage investigators by providing clinician researchers, early career faculty, and pre- and postdoctoral trainees dedicated time for research at the intersection of HIV and mental health. And just to make it very clear, this is actually the CHARM Scholar Award, not the CHARM Pilot Award. The CHARM Pilot is a separate program which we'll be happy to tell you a little bit about later if you're not familiar with it, but this is the CHARM Scholar Award. All right, next. Okay, what is required for eligibility? First of all, this is open exclusively to people who are affiliated with the University of Miami, and it's for early career faculty, and there's a specific sort of definition of who qualifies as early career faculty. It's people who have had less than 10 years since they got their final degree and who have not obtained major NIH funding, such as like an R grant. If you have a K grant or an F grant, you're still eligible to be considered early career faculty. It's also open to postdoctoral fellows. And something that we're going to try out is that we're opening this to pre-doctoral students who are in the candidacy stage. But if any of you on the call are pre-doc students, in other words, PhD students, then there's some specific items for you to be attending to. Okay, so for anybody who's not a full-time faculty, you're going to need, in addition, a letter of support as part of the application. Okay, from if you're faculty, if you're not faculty and are, let's say, a postdoctoral fellow or a scientist, then you need a letter from your chair or your dean attesting to your eligibility, your ability to fulfill the project, and that you're going to get some support from your chair or dean so that you can conduct the study. If you're a pre-doc, rather than have a letter from your chair or your dean, you need a letter from your PhD dissertation advisor or your program director, attesting to the fact that you are a student in the PhD program in good standing, that you're a doctoral candidate. In other words, you're in the dissertation stage, and that your project that you're proposing is approved by your dissertation committee, and that you're qualified and that your PhD program will support you. Okay, let's move on. Next slide. Okay, and the Scholar Award proposals can pertain to any area that's relevant to the intersection of HIV and mental health with a focus on disparities. And you can build upon current research projects that are being conducted by a mid-career or senior investigators. In other words, you can do a secondary analysis or an ancillary study to their study. And in that case, the PI of the parent project will serve as a mentor. You are required to name a primary mentor in your application, who will be required to submit their biosketch and also a letter of support. Okay, and you can propose a project that builds upon your own previous or ongoing research, and then you would still have to have a mentor. This is a one-year grant, and whatever project you are proposing should be executable during that time frame. Okay, next. All right, so this is a two-stage process for the application. Pretty soon, coming up pretty soon on July 25th, you would need to submit a letter of intent and specific aims, and I'll go into what that consists of in just a bit. And then we will review that letter and specific aims, and then inform people who apply, who submit the LOI, that they are being invited back to submit a full application. So you don't have to like prepare a full application up front. You submit this letter of intent and specific aims, and then you find out whether or not you should go ahead and write a full application. The full application, and it's at that stage of the full application that you need those extra letters that I mentioned. Okay, you don't need that up front. The full application is due to CHARM on September 25th. And the earliest start date, although, I mean, we are quite flexible about this, is June 1 of 2024. All right, next. Okay, letter of intent. There's a link for the letter of intent that we can provide in live format for you. And basically, it's not really a letter so much. We just call it a letter of intent. It's really like a red cap survey. It's going to ask you for your information, your name, your email, your status, are you a student, are you a faculty, etc. What is the time frame that you're asking for? So it's for, this is intended to be 1 year, can be shorter. And it's, but you may need this earlier or later than June 1. So let us know what is the time frame in which you need this support, and who is your primary mentor, who is your community partner. A community partner is required. You don't necessarily have to name them in the LOI. You can just say you don't have one. And if you would like, we can help you to identify a community partner. And you have to include specific aims, which I'll tell you a little bit about in a sec, okay? And as mentioned already, the full application is by invitation only after you submit this letter of intent and specific aims. Next slide. All right, specific aims. For those of you who may not be familiar with this, this is sort of a key element of any application to the NIH. It is a one-page document that basically is the executive summary of what you're planning to do. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in a bit. The other sections of the full application is a 6-page research plan, is a career statement, budget and budget justification. In other words, how much are you asking for? The maximum, unless you're a PhD student, is $45,000 for the year. And then the budget justification basically explains how you're spending that money. Who are the people? What are they doing? What are the other expenses that you have? You have to include an NIH biosketch for yourself and for your mentor. And if you have more than one mentor, you'd have them for those other people as well. And then a letter of recommendation, we just are requiring one from an academic source, someone who is not involved in the project. So it could be another faculty member, either from this institution or for your prior institution, or someone else that you work with, but not for the project that you are proposing. Okay, and then you need that letter of support from the chair or the dean, if you're not a full-time faculty, or from the PhD program director if you are a PhD student, and the letter of support from the community partner or agency. These are just the elements. We have a more extensive description of all of this on a web page that is at the end of this PowerPoint. All right, next. Okay, back to specific aims. So that's what you need to submit as part of the letter of intent. And it is a really important part of any grant application because, as I mentioned, it's really the executive summary. And it serves as the blueprint for the rest of what you're going to do, right? And so you're going to basically be describing concisely what is the research, what is the significance, what is it intended, what is your project intended to accomplish, what gap is it filling, how will it impact the research field. You're basically describing maybe why you or your environment are really well, or your mentor's project is well suited to complete this study. And what are the expected outcomes, right? So, and if there are hypotheses, what are your hypotheses? So those are the specific aims. That's the page that we need, and then our team, the developmental core and the CHARM executive committee, will be reviewing these and deciding which ones we want to go ahead and invite for the next phase for the full application. Next. Okay. So these awards, if you're a faculty or postdoc, can be up to $45,000 indirect costs. In other words, you don't have to add indirect costs to this. You have $45,000 to spend for a 1-year period. It would be prorated less if it's less than 1 year. This is intended to really support the effort of an individual so that you have protected time to work on a project. And therefore, the minimum effort that we're requiring is 15% effort. Okay, so you have to figure out what 15% of your effort, both direct salary and fringe benefits, costs, and then figure out what percent you can support. You can also use the money in addition to the minimum effort. You can also spend it on career development activities, on completing the project, for example, paying participants, or if there are costs associated with the project. But we really encourage secondary analysis or ancillary studies so that you're able to really leverage something that's already been done or already being done so that you can protect as much of your time as necessary. It's a very different story if you're a PhD student. Here, the maximum amount of award will be $5,000, and it's to support research activities only. So if you have proposed your dissertation, or know what you're going to be proposing, and you need money to complete parts of your study, then you can request up to $5,000 to support those research activities. And again, the time frame is flexible. It doesn't have to be a full year. You calculate when more or less you would need to start your project, when more or less you think you'll finish, and give us that time frame in the letter of intent. And it can be approximate. We're just asking for month and year to month and year. It doesn't, it can be quite flexible. And in all cases, as I mentioned, you have to provide a budget justification, which is a detailed description of the role of any investigators. Typically, mentors are not paid. It's if you have other investigators or other research costs, and you also would typically be including some kind of costs for community members or community agency, depending on the scope of work. Okay. Next. So CHARM is a great center. I didn't talk too much about CHARM, but CHARM, as I mentioned, is an NIH-funded center that is focused on HIV and mental health disparities. And we have different services that are available to investigators, mentees, anybody who's applying for our projects by the different cores. So the methods core can provide consultations on quantitative and qualitative methods, any statistical issues, power analyses, things like that. The mental health disparities core provides consultation on community engagement, on assessment that's culturally tailored, intervention approaches that are culturally tailored for research projects with ethnic, sexual, and gender minorities. So if you need help in identifying a community partner, for example, the mental health disparities core can provide that, some input on that, right? Obviously, you have to go out and do the outreach, but the disparities core can give you some ideas on who might be a good partner for you to reach out to. The implementation science core, the equitable implementation science core, provides consultations on implementation science components of research projects. In other words, if you're proposing something where it's an intervention to be implemented, to be done in a community setting to advance the uptake of or acceptance of a evidence-based practice in a community setting, then an implementation science consult might be helpful to you. And the developmental core can help you to identify a primary mentor, to develop a mentoring plan, to receive feedback prior to submitting a pilot award application, which I'll say, or a scholar award application, as I'll mention in a sec. All right, next. Okay, so a little bit more about what's required here. As I mentioned, applicants must identify a community partner in the full application. You don't need to in the LOI if you're not there yet. And the community partner or agency can be engaged at varying levels. They can be a co-investigator, they can be consultants, they can be a site principal investigator for data collection. And so there needs to be a budget that's corresponding with the scope of work of what the community partner is going to do. And as I mentioned, the cores can, the Dev Core can assist with identifying a partner or an agency. Actually, I'm sorry, it's the Disparities Core that can assist with identifying a partner and agency. If you would like any kind of consultation from CHARM, you can go to this REDCap survey that will help to, it's a portal that'll help direct you to the support that you need. Okay, and this is not just for this process. You know, you can, if you're doing any work that's associated with the CHARM theme of HIV and mental health, you can reach out through this portal to ask for a consultation. Next. All right. We did mention already that you need to have a letter of support from the community partner for the full application. And, you know, you're encouraged to really figure out who is the community partner, who is, and to really talk with them throughout the proposal development. And the proposal needs to explain how the project's going to engage the community, the role of the proposed community partner, and how the findings may impact and be disseminated to the community. Next. All right, as mentioned, the letter of intent and the specific aims are due July 25th by 5 p.m. And to request support from CHARM, you need to use the CHARM Research Navigation Portal, or you can just contact us directly, but you know, we really encourage the use of the portal because that really will expedite you getting things done. I think that's the end of this. And now we're going to open things up in case anybody has any questions or anything among the CHARM team that you would like to add. I see a hand, Rosanna.
Oh, no, I was just clapping.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a waving hand. It's a clapping hand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any others?
Hi, I have a question. I'm an international student. I was wondering, I just defended my dissertation, so technically not a student anymore. But I'm international. I'm not a US citizen. I was wondering if I apply to this grant, how it would work and what are the conditions if there are any. Thank you.
Okay, that's a great question. And to be quite honest with you, we haven't thought that through. I would suggest to you is that you go ahead and put in an LOI, especially if you already have a specific aim sort of kind of drafted from something. But we will also, you know, take down your information and sort of try to follow up with you on that, because that is a very good question. And I guess one of the questions also besides international status is whether or not there's a current affiliation with the university. So that would be another question. But maybe that's something that we can talk about offline, and you can send an email to myself or to, you know, or through the CHARM email, and we can follow up on that. Definitely don't want to just say no. So let's think it through and figure out if it's possible, right? Sometimes great things are possible that we hadn't thought through.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Sure. Any other questions?
Yes, hi. Thank you for the presentation. I just want to differentiate the pilot from this program and just have some more distinctions in terms of what they require, what they consist of that are particularly different.
Yeah, okay. So that's a great question. And I'm happy that you're actually interested in both. So the pilot awards is really for a project, even though the Scholar Award also has a project, but the Scholar Award is much more geared towards sort of protecting time, right? So the pilot does not have a requirement for, it has a lower threshold for the requirement for effort from the PI. And often people are doing standalone projects, although an ancillary project or a secondary analysis is also possible. One of the differences between the pilot and the Scholar Award, first of all, is a slightly different amount of money. The pilot award is up to $50,000, whereas the Scholar Award is a little bit less, $45,000 is the maximum. The pilot award is funneled through NIH. So there is, once a pilot award is recommended by CHARM for funding, then it needs to be put together as a full NIH proposal, which we provide some assistance with, but then a full NIH proposal that gets submitted to the NIH for their approval. Whereas the Scholar Award is something that does not go through NIH, and as I said, it's really much more focused to providing protected time for current faculty, for postdocs, to be able to complete some work that they're working on. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a brand new project. It can be something that you're working on. If obviously not something that you're already receiving funding for something else from another source. This has to be that you need additional money to be able to complete the study, but also to provide protected time. So that's the main differences that come to mind. If there are others on the call who can add to that, that would be great.
Thank you.
Let me see some things in the chat. Let me see. Okay, great. Yanexi added the links that are relevant and her email to follow up with some of the questions we've been talking about. Anything else?
Sure, I'll keep going.
Go ahead.
So if someone is applying for a pilot award and they go through the speed review, would the reviewers at that point suggest what the project is most appropriate for? Whether,
Probably not the reviewers. So just like with NIH, you can't submit the same project for both a Scholar and the pilot awards. But fortunately, the speed review is happening tomorrow. So that would give you an opportunity to still apply for the Scholar Award if you determined that it made more sense as a Scholar Award. I'm trying to think about what would be some of the reasons for going for one rather than the other. If there's anything beyond what I mentioned, which is much more inclined towards protected time in the Scholar Award. But offhand, I can't think of that. But if you're going to be in the speed review tomorrow, then that's something that we can think about with you.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Like this is our first one, right? So this is just like when you have your first child, you drop them on their heads a couple of times and then you figure it out better for the second one. So we haven't thought through we haven't thought through every single one of these details. And so you're bringing up, everyone is bringing up great questions. So, and we will try not to drop anybody on their head, by the way. That was being kind of a smart aleck. Okay, and if anybody wants to, I mean, this is, as you see, an intimate circle. Anybody wants to follow up, directly with an email after this webinar, even after the speed review, and sort of talk through some of these questions, definitely we're happy to do that. Okay. All right, now I get to see everybody. I wasn't seeing you all before. I was in the spotlight. All right.
Yes.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for those of you who are interested in applying. Thank you for the CHARM team for being here. We really appreciate everybody's support. And for those of you who are interested in applying, look around you. As you can see, there's a lot of people in CHARM who are here to really help you develop in your career. And if for whatever reason eligibility isn't possible, that doesn't mean that we stop talking and stop trying to figure all of this out. Okay. That's what we're here to do. All right. Beautiful. Bye, everybody.